Oh, that's right. I forgot Zoom now warns everybody they're being recorded.
All right, it's all you.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ron Wilhoit from Legal Server, and I will be leading the training today. If you haven't been on one of the other sessions, just a couple of notes about the Zoom session itself and the fact that we encourage questions during these sessions. So you can ask your questions one of two ways. Feel free to unmute yourself, ask a question that way. We've got a relatively small group today, so that shouldn't be an issue. And the other way you can do it is by posting a question into the Zoom chat room. Both of those functions, if you haven't seen those before, typically if you float your mouse cursor over where you can see my screen, which hopefully everybody can see our agenda for the Go Live training today. When you put your mouse cursor over that window, typically you see a bar will show up at the bottom, and the far left you can mute and unmute yourself, and over towards the right you'll see where you can click to open a window for the chat room. So feel free to ask questions either way. If you do post something in the chat, I may not see it right away, but definitely as we go along, we'll periodically review that and do our best to answer those questions. All right, so we are going to get two major topics today, working on cases and everybody's favorite topic, timekeeping. So we're scheduled to go for a couple of hours. May not take the whole 2 hours, but we'll see how that goes along. All right, so to talk about working on cases, I'm going to flip over to your demo site, and I'm meant to be on the home page. But possibly new, possibly just a little bit of a review in terms of working on cases. You log in, you land on your home page in Legal Server, and then for people who are handling cases, you've got your My Assignments tab, which has a list of all of the open and pending cases that you're currently assigned to. And we'll talk about there's different types of assignments on cases that you can have, but this will be, in any capacity you're assigned to a case. So here's your active case list. You want to work on one of these cases, you just click on the case number to go to the case itself. In case you haven't seen this before, there is the concept in Legal Server of a client profile versus a case profile. The client profile you get to if you click on a client's name. So I'll do that. You can see that brings up the client profile page. So, this is a really exciting page and all that. What it shows you depends on the configuration on the site, but typically shows you information from the most recent case that the client has in the system. And then if that client has been associated, or I should say this client has been associated with multiple cases, they will all be listed here. You may never have a need to look at the client profile page. The reason I always like to show it to people is because one of the things that I'm going to tell you here in just a minute is when you go to work on cases, that the actions menu is your friend. And it's not unusual when you first start using Legal Server to, see on your home page or someplace, you see the client name and a case number and click on the client name, which will land you on this client profile. And then you'll be looking up here for the actions menu I'm going to talk about, and you'll be saying, it's not there. Why isn't it there? That trainer guy said, go to the actions menu to do things. So if you do land on the client profile page by mistake, you just come down and click on the case number of the only case or whichever case it is you're wanting to work on. All right, so I'm going to do that. So this will bring us to a case profile. This is actually the case that we're looking at is a criminal case. And so it's being displayed with the criminal profile. And I'm trying to highlight that up here in the breadcrumbs. So hopefully you can see it. A lot of the time it's not probably going to matter to you one way or the other, but you can have different profile views for cases. So you all could have a civil profile, you have a criminal profile, and you could have other profiles to display cases as well. All that means is that what shows up in the main part of the page here could be different between those different profiles. So this one, we happen to be looking at a criminal profile. So the first thing we see the client's name and case number at the top left, and then we see boxes in here with a lot of information. So we see the disposition of the case is open. We can see that the custodial status is pretrial detention, no bail hold. The top charge in the case, cause number, current status of the case, and so forth. We can also see a list of all the charges on the case, contact information for the client, if that information is in there, and then some other case information over here on the right, the cause number, legal problem code, funding code, and then the information about the current primary assignment on the case, the office program that is assigned to, and the person that it's assigned to. So I'm logged in as demo trainer today. You can see the primary assignment on this case is legal server staff. This case was on my homepage. So again, you can have a case on your homepage even if you're not the primary assignment on the case. So down below this area that we actually call the snapshot up here, I'm going to scroll down so you can see. So you have a series of tabs here. The first tab, which is just a little caret symbol, it's got the client's name, cause number, a lot of other fields here. Those are all pretty self-explanatory. And we'll go through these other tabs kind of quickly just to give you a flavor for what's showing up here. So you have this people organizations tab, which is going to show you, first it's going to show you a list of all the people linked to the case and their role on the case. It's also going to show you some other information if it exists in the system. Below that, we see the assignment history on the case. So who's currently assigned to the case, who's in the past has been assigned to the case. Then we see a list of any adverse parties and then any non-adverse parties / family members down here. Come back up to our tab row. Excuse me, we have tab task / events. As you might expect, what that's going to show you is any incomplete tasks on this case, as well as any upcoming events. Case notes tab is going to show you just that. It's going to show you notes that have been entered on this case. We'll come back here in a minute and talk much more detail about case notes. You have a time slips tab, which is going to show you all of the time that has been entered on the case. Notice, the caseworker column here. This is going to show you time entered by everybody. It's not just going to be time that you've entered. There's a litigation tab, which is going to show you any litigation records on a case. And then the final tab on the first tab row is the activity log. And we're going to talk more today what activity records are specifically. So I see we've got a question posted. In the event of something like a probation violation, how do we reopen a previously closed case? If you have the ability to do that, and that's something that your site administrators control in terms of permissions, you would go to the actions menu and look for a reopen case link. So I don't have a closed case right now that we can look at, but one of the things that we're going to do today is close a case and reopen it. So coming attraction there. Now, if I scroll on down the main profile, you can see the second row of tabs here. I've got information about charges on the case, information about credits on the case, and information about any discovery records that have been entered. The final row of tabs deals with documents. So we have document templates tab. We're not going to do anything with document templates today. Just very briefly to let you know, it's people with the appropriate permissions can set up templates and upload those into Legal Server and then map fields to various markers in those templates. So you could then, for example, well, actually, we'll just try this notice of appearance real quick. We'll see what happens. So we'll live dangerously. And that, where is it gone? So you can see here where, there's a marker that says put the client's name here. Somebody's done that. There's a marker that says put the case number here. Somebody's done that, and so forth. And this, I'm trying to get this out of my way now. Let's see if I can do that. All right. Sorry about this. The Zoom bar is blocking me doing anything. All right. So we're back on our case profile. There's also the concept in Legal Server of email templates. And then finally, there is a list of documents that have been uploaded to the case. And we're going to upload some documents as we go through and do some of these, use some of these functions. So we'll talk a little bit more about documents specifically as we go. There's also another list of information down here that I can't tell exactly what it is supposed to be. I have a feeling it's probably just kind of left over from somebody testing. All right, so that's a tour around what the criminal profile looks like, how it's laid out and so forth. So that's great. We can look at all this information, but how do I do something with this case? So this is where I'm going to say that in Legal Server, the actions menu is your friend, particularly when you're working on cases. So it's your friend in many places, but specifically when you're working on cases. So you float your mouse cursor over the actions menu and you'll see that a menu pops up. There's a lot of stuff in here. So I want to talk about how this works and how it's laid out. To a great extent, your site administrators control what links that you see in here. They also control these categories over on the left. And so right now, your actions menu has been organized into 6 different categories. So the first one called actions. The second one is called assign, close, and refer. You can see that's got some links inside of it. You have an edit case info category that's got several links inside of it. And you have a criminal actions category, a case copy category, and then finally a special programs category, which right now only has 1 link inside of it. So you have a bunch of categories. Each one of those has 1 or more links inside of it. So there's a lot of places to look until you get acclimated about where something is in the actions menu. Notice that there is a little search box up here at the top. So if, for example, somebody told me, hey, on your I need a help case, you need to file an expert witness request. So you could, click around as I just did. You could also just start typing a word like expert, and that'll show you any link that's got that text in it. So that's how I would click to do an expert witness request. So I want to close a case. I can see that I've got 2 different links regarding closing cases. And then if I wanted to add a note to a case and so forth. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to click on each one of these links and each one of these categories and go over all of these in excruciating detail and show you what they do. So we should be done probably in about 3.5, 4 hours or something like that. So hopefully everybody is laughing hysterically at that, terrible joke. We are not going to do that. But what we do want to do instead is focus on some sort of the big things that you can do on cases, which I realize, for different people, it's going to vary in terms of what they consider big things. But walking through these will give you a good idea of, how to use other links. But for nearly all of these links, you're going to click on a link. It's going to display a form that you can do something with. You'll do something with that form. You'll click on a continue or a save button, and then that'll change information on the case. So the first thing we want to talk about are case notes. So how do I add a note? So typically something that people do on cases quite a bit. So in the actions menu, you have an add case note link. So that's going to bring up the case note form. And you can see if you were in one of the other sessions, you probably already recognize you've got a couple of required fields there already. So note type is required. That defaults to case notes. You can change to a different type of note here. Doesn't really do much of anything, and you probably, don't have a specific, need to do that. But, depending on how you want to set up and use your site, that might apply to you sometimes. Case notes have an optional subject. So I'm just going to say this is my optional note subject. The body, if you haven't seen it before in terms of these text area boxes, I always like to point out to people a couple of different things. I'm going to type a bunch of gibberish in here. So one is you're not limited to the amount of space that you can see on the screen. So you might have been able to see that as I kept typing, a scroll bar showed up over here on the right. So there's no practical limit on the amount of information you can put in a case note. Some people take that as a challenge, and I say definitely do that. So see if you can get more text in there than the system will handle. Pretty confident in saying you won't be able to. So you can come in here and type. I forgot to mention, as I had a bunch of gibberish in there, that we've got red wavy lines under the misspelled words. Spell checking is a function of your browser, not LegalServer. If you're using any modern browser, you probably have spell checking on by default already. You've probably seen it on other web pages. If for some reason you don't see spell checking in LegalServer, just right click inside one of these boxes and you should see an option that says, enable spelling, check spelling, so forth. A common question here, and especially for people who are going to try to break the system by adding a lot of text to a case note, is can you paste information from your clipboard? And yes, so these are text boxes, so you can copy from them. You can, you go over and look, say a court website or some other website, get information about the case. You can select it and copy it to your clipboard. You can come over and put it into a case note. I'm just going to say this is body of my note. So I'm going to scroll down. There's a lot of other things that you can do here. Sometimes people get a little bit nervous. It's like, I've got all this other stuff to fill out. All I want to do is just enter a case note. You can do that. So you can skip over all this stuff here and ignore it and just click on continue and create your case note. So it doesn't, it's not a huge amount of clicking around. But some of the other things you can do, you can send an email message about this note by clicking the choose recipients button. A note about the demo site, if you get on the demo site, have the opportunity to do that, to play around. This feature on the demo sites will only send an email to people who are administrators. So if you get on, you go to enter a note and you try to email yourself. If you're not an administrator, it won't work. Live site, of course, you'll be able to send to whoever you want to. The recipients boxes, you can enter email addresses manually. You also can start typing somebody's name and you will get, suggested results that you can click on. You can enter multiple email addresses there. What this feature does is once I click continue to submit this form, then it will, of course, save the note on the case. It will then generate an email to Thomas. It'll say it's coming from me, the person filling out the form. He will get the email to include the body of the note that I put in here. The subject, if I've entered a subject, that'll be the subject of the email. And then he will also get, or all the recipients will get, a link directly back to this case. So depending on workflow and what people are doing, sometimes that can be very helpful. So, if you send somebody an email, they're sitting, in court or someplace and checking their email on their phone, they'll get the email, they could click that link and that would take them to LegalServer if they weren't logged in. Once they logged in, then it would take them directly to this case. You can also upload documents to a case at the same time as you are entering a case note. If you want to do that, you click the Browse button. That opens up the files that are on the computer that you're working on. And you go in and you select a file. You have a button over on the right to upload file and add another. So if you want to upload multiples, you can do that. So that leaves you at the top of the form. So you have to scroll back down, and then you can see the one file that you're going to upload. And you click your browse button and you select another file. And then finally, when you're entering a note, you can also enter a time slip on the case as well. And we'll see when we talk about timekeeping, you can do the reverse. You can enter a time slip and also add a case note. If you want to add time while you're adding a case note, you can click on yes. You enter the time spent. Your site right now is configured to record time in tenths of an hour. So I entered 0.25, and you enter time in hours. I should tell you that. So I entered 0.25. Hopefully you can see it's rounded that up to 0.3 for me. The funding code on the time slip is going to default to the cases funding code. You can change that if it's appropriate. Time slips on cases can have a different funding code from the case in LegalServer, but they default to having the same funding code. You can enter an activity code, which is a drop-down list of values that your site administrators control, but it's optional. You also have the PAI time field on here, which PAI, if you're not familiar with that, stands for private attorney involvement, which is, for most organizations, that's equivalent of saying, this will be tagging this as a pro bono time slip. All right, so I'm ready to click continue. All right, so that brings me back to the case profile. And let's now see what I accomplished here. So let's first look at time slips. And I can see here's the time slip that I just entered for 0.3 hours. And let's look at case notes. And I can see here's the case note that I just entered. Here are the two files that I uploaded. They show up with the case note itself when you upload that way. And then if I go down to the case documents, we'll see those two files down here. All right, so let's come back up to the case notes list and talk about case notes a little more specifically. So this is the list of the case notes. You may notice that they are in reverse chronological order. So the oldest notes show up at the bottom of the list. So I can see the intake notes down here that Patrick entered, some case accept assignment notes, case note, and saying why so many options. And yeah, some of the forms do have a lot of options on them, and so forth. You can temporarily change this order by clicking on the column heading. So if I click the column heading, it'll reverse the sort. And then if I want to get back to reverse chronological, I just click it again. You may notice you have a little box up here, a search box that'll search the body and the subject of the notes. So if I put Y in the search box and either wait 2 seconds or press my tab key, then you can see it's going to take me down to just the one note where Patrick put why so many options in the body. If I make some changes to the list like that, I want to get back to my full list, I could just refresh the page. I also, over on the filter bar, I've got a little reset icon that I can click on. That is going to leave me at the top of the profile, so I would have to, come back down and go click on the case notes tab again. Hopefully you've attended one of the earlier sessions and talked about lists of information, so you'll know that this little icon here that looks like a funnel or a golf tee, it shows you what you can filter the notes on. So, if you have 6 notes on a case, not exactly a big deal. If you have 600 notes on a case, being able to filter might be helpful. You also have the ability to export the data to Excel or to a CSV file. You may have also noticed there's a little plus icon here on the case notes list. That is the that little icon will let you add a case note, exactly the same as when I went to the actions menu and clicked on add case note. So if you happen to already be looking at the case notes list, you don't even need to go to the actions menu. You can just click on this icon. And you'll see that's going to load the same case note form that we saw before. Now, while we're here, not something necessarily substantive. When you first start using Legal Server, it's very common, you're working on a case or looking at cases and you're playing around with the actions menu and you land on a form and either, you clicked on the wrong thing by mistake, or for whatever reason, you get to a page like this and you're like, this is not what I wanted. I don't know what to do here. How do I get out of this? So this form, you would have to enter a fake case note. And so, put something in the body and so forth. Not a big deal. And on your demo site, it's not a big deal at all. You get on your live site, you tend to not want to enter fake records like that. So if you land on a form like this that you don't want to fill out for whatever reason, the easiest way to get back to the full view of the case is to go up into this breadcrumbs area. And in that area, the client's name and case number is a clickable link. And that will do just that. It'll take you back to the full view of the case. You haven't entered a fake case note, activity record, time slip, whatever it happens to be. All right, so that's a couple of different ways that you can enter case notes. As I mentioned, we'll see when we talk about entering time. You'll also be able to create a case note when you're adding time to a case. But then there's one final way that I wanted to show you in terms of entering notes on a case. You may have noticed in the snapshot area up here, so it tells you who the primary advocate is. And there's also up here, it tells you that the case's email address. So every case in Legal Server has an email address, and it's just simply the case number and then your site name. So we're on your demo site, so it's at nevada-demo.legalserver.org. On your live site, the -demo won't be in there. The little icon out to the left is a copy to clipboard icon. So you can copy the case email address to your clipboard. Then you can flip over to your email program and you can treat the case's email address like any other email address. So you can send to it, you can CC it, and you can also BCC it. So sort of the classic example that I give is, you go to a hearing, later on, you get an email from opposing counsel, says, hey, here's a proposed order to, let me know if it's okay to submit it to the judge. So you look at the order, you reply to opposing counsel, and you say, yeah, order looks fine, go ahead and submit it. And you can BCC your case. What that will do is create a case note. It will also upload the attachment to the file as a document. So that doesn't demo very well. So I just did this earlier. I sent an email to this case. And if we come down here, this is the email that was created, or the email was created, the case note that was created from the email I sent. So I sent an email to this case. Legal Server said, yeah, you got the correct case number. So it generated this case note. You can identify these case notes because the subject of the note will be email : and then the subject from the email message itself. These notes will also always be entered by the system user. And they're also called general notes. So Legal Server then took the email message itself and grabbed the from line, put that into the body of the case note. Then it grabbed the body of the email message and put that into the case note. And then if there were any attachments, it uploaded those to the case as attachments to that case note. These files, just like the ones that I manually uploaded earlier, they will also appear in the documents list on a case, but they will show up in a slightly different place. So if I go back to the case documents list, you can see there's a special folder called Mail. That gets created automatically when an email comes in, the first time an email comes into a case. And then there's a subfolder underneath mail called attachments, and that's where those will all land. Well, we're down here looking at the documents list. I'll just go ahead and tell you that you can drag things around. So if I wanted this file, both of these files to be in the top level folder so I could easily see them, I can drag and drop. You can only drag and drop one at a time. But I'll get those up out there. So you can see there's links to these various documents, both with the case notes and down in the document section. They haven't been uploaded to the case twice. It's links to the same files. There's just, you know, links in different places for your convenience. All right, so that is adding case notes to a case. Then we next want to talk about assignments on cases. So we've mentioned assignments a few times. If you were in one of the earlier sessions, you probably talked about, you know, the primary advocate on a case and that whole concept. But let's come back to the People Organizations tab and look at the assignments list in a little more detail. So this is the assignment history list. If you notice over on the right, the end date column, 2 of these assignments have end dates, 2 of them don't. So the 2 with no end date, those are current assignments. So this case is currently assigned to legal server staff as the primary and to me, demo trainer, with the assignment type of attorney. You may recall that you must have one primary assignment at all times on open and pending cases and closed cases as well. You can have as many additional assignments on a case as you want. These other cases, so the intake assignment, this tells me that Patrick did the intake, and Patrick was also the primary on this case from January 5th to March 2nd. And so when legal server staff came in and or somebody came in and changed the primary assignment from Patrick over to legal server staff on 3/2, his primary assignment was automatically ended. This case will be on the home page of everyone who is currently assigned to the case. Right, so there's a couple of things you may want to do here. You may want to change who the primary assignment is. So let's say I'm going to take over this case from legal server staff. Then I can come down here. I can do this a couple of ways. I've got an edit pencil here to edit the primary assignment. I also have a little plus sign here to go to the assigned case page. So I'll just show you the assigned case page. And as the instruction tells you, the case has a primary assignment, you can transfer it to a different person. You also, below there, you have the ability to, instead, to add an additional assignment to the case this way. So I'm going to say I want to transfer this case. So I want to make myself the primary. So the office is going to stay the same, program's going to stay the same, but you can change these. So this is, you know, you may have an instance where you need to transfer a case to a different office. This is how you could do that. The caseworker. Now the caseworker list, notice that I've only got one option here, Stan. So why is this list so short? That's because this list of caseworkers is only the people who are linked to the office the case is assigned to. Can you assign to people that are not linked to that office? Answer is yes. That's what this show values for all offices checkbox is about. Now, follow your organization policy in terms of, you know, should you assign somebody from Carson City to an Elko County case? You know, that I don't know the answer to. But with this checkbox, you're going to see a list of all of the current staff that are in the system. So I thought I was the Elko County office, but maybe not. So I'm going to assign myself. I can enter some notes about this assignment. I can also enter some a case assignment case note here. And then I can email the note. I could also send the note as a message. Don't know if y'all are using the I'm just going to say taking over this case. I don't know if y'all are using the message center in Legal Server, but I'll send this to myself and we'll see if it shows up. The sending something by an email is, of course, just what it sounds like. We've talked about sending it as a message is an internal feature within Legal Server. So this, as opposed to email, which obviously has to go out, over the internet to get to you, the message stays within Legal Server. All right, so I'm going to click continue. And so you do have the message center enabled up at the top of the page. Notice I've got this little messages widget. And if I flip my mouse cursor over it, it tells me I've got one unread message, and that's the one that I just entered here. So you can use that. So back on the case profile, looking at the snapshot, I can see now the advocate over here is me, demo trainer. And if we come back down to the people organizations tab, look at the assignment history list, I can see that I am now listed as the primary. Notice Legal Server staff's primary assignment now has an end date on it. So this case will drop off of Legal Server staff's homepage because Legal Server staff is no longer assigned to it. This case will actually appear on my homepage twice because I have two current assignments on it. So if I was actually doing this, I would typically then want to come in and end this assignment or just get rid of it. To do that, I can click the edit pencil. And that's going to take me to a page where I can do a couple of things to end the assignment or delete the assignment. I see we have a question posted. If you have Legal Server minimized, you're notified that there are messages pending. No, it's not going to pop up a notification within your computer. And the reason for that, as I say, that is all inside of Legal Server. So there's no data, really floating around to your computer or any place else. It's in your browser, of course. But yeah, so you're not going to get a notification like you probably get when you get a new email or something. So for these additional assignments, other than the primary, let's say you've got two different options. You can end an assignment, and then you have a link to delete an assignment. So it's one of the few places in Legal Server we actually let you delete things. If this assignment was just a mistake, so you might just want to delete it and get it out of the system. Typically, though, for assignments, if somebody's been assigned to a case and they've worked on it, they're no longer going to be working on it for whatever reason, you want to come in and end their assignment because you want to keep that history of the fact that they were assigned to this case. So if I click on the link to end the assignment, I'm going to get a prompt that says, are you sure you want to end it? If I say yes, that's going to take me back to the case profile. And if I come back to the people organizations tab, look at the assignment history again, I can see now there's only one person currently assigned to it, and that's me as the primary. And then my assignment as the attorney type assignment now has an end date on it. All right, so that's assignments on cases. We next want to talk about the case status feature in Legal Server. So the case status feature in Legal Server is designed primarily to be something that you use while a case is open, but different organizations use it different ways. Oftentimes within an organization, different groups, different teams of people, different offices will use or not use the case status feature. So case status we do see in the snapshot area up here. We see the status, and then we see a value. The value is a clickable link, which will take you to the page where you can change the case status. Even if it says NA there, so case status has never been set on a case, that'll be a clickable link. So this one says right now working. So I'm just going to click that and show you the case status change page. First thing it shows you at the top of the page is the history of all the case status changes on the case. So we can see this is where Patrick came in and changed it to working and said, why so many options? And there are a lot of options on this page. So you change the case status to something, and this is kind of a good example. This won't happen to you too much, but notice the previous case status was working, and now case status here, I can, working is there. Okay, sorry. These have just been, they're not in alphabetical order, which is what I'm used to. So ignore that part. So now I can come, let's say, I want to say the case status is now ready to close. So the scenario I use is, I'm a new attorney. I work on cases, but I'm not supposed to close them until somebody's reviewed the case for me. So I'm going to say the case status is ready to close. The due date here doesn't really do anything. You can use it if you have a use for it. And then you're required to enter a case note. And you can see the note type has already been set to general notes. The subject has been filled out for you. You can change the subject, if you need to. But a typical example is you would come in and say, ready to close, please review. And then you might either send an email or a message. You can also do both to the supervising attorney, whoever's supposed to review your case. So I'll just say message, and we're going to say, I'm going to say Thomas is my supervising attorney. So I'm going to click on continue. So now back on the case profile, we can see ready to close. If I go over to the case notes, I can see that, I entered the note, changed the case status, and have the ready to close, please review note there. Then I'm going to show you a couple of other places that case status can be useful. So I'm going to go back to my home page. So typically on your My Assignments page, and I can see there's, the message that I got. So you have the homepage alerts for messages set up. So just to show you on these, so you get an alert like this. It's going to give you a link, to, assuming the alert is linked to a case, it's going to give you a link to it. You also, out to the right, will have a dismiss link that you can click on, and that will dismiss that alert. Now, since I only had the one alert, that whole red message alert bar went away. If I had 3, alerts there, then it would still be there, and because I still had some active alerts or undismissed alerts. But coming back to the My Assignments and case status, notice that you have a case status column showing on your My Assignments list. So if you only have 2 open and pending cases, not exactly a huge burden to keep track of that. But if you have 30 cases, if you have 75 cases, it can be handy as you're working on your cases to be able to see the current case status. So this case, for example, I could skip over and knowing that, ready to close, that means that I'm just waiting on my supervisor. If you do have, a lot of cases, case status is also a filter on this list. So you could come in and say, I want to filter on certain case statuses there. The other place, I don't know if it's going to show up on your cases page. Let's take a look. So I think you all use an embedded report. Yeah, case status is showing up over here. So this can be helpful again. The cases, main cases page, this cases list is not just your cases. These are all of the cases in your office. So for some of you, it might be helpful to see the case status on all of these cases here. All right, so I'm going to go back to my example case. And then we want to talk next about activity records on cases. So on the case profile, you may remember in the top row here, you had an activity log tab. And that shows you a list of activity records that have been entered. So oftentimes when we get to this point and start talking about activity records and somebody's looking at this and they're saying, you know, well, why do you have case notes and you also have these activity logs, you also have time slips, you know, and so forth. So just different groups like to enter data in different ways. Most everybody uses case notes, you know, organizations that are required to keep time, you know, they all obviously enter time slips on their cases. Activity records let you enter data in a very structured way. So a lot of the organizations using activity records, they want to, or they need to be able to report on their data in a very structured way. So, you know, if you need to be able to say, you know, how many cases did we have trials on in the last 6 months, the last year? So you enter that via activity records in a structured way, it's very easy to report on. If people just, you know, they had a trial and they entered a case note about it, you could potentially report on that, but, you know, you'd be doing reports, it would be based on parsing, you know, the text and case notes and so forth. So a little harder to report on. There's also a feature with activity records that will let you, based on the activity you're entering, will automatically give you a chance to create tasks and events as a result of that. So that's one of the other reasons that some organizations like activity records. So we can see that Patrick has entered a couple of activity records on this case. Legal server staff has entered an activity record. If I go to the actions menu, I do have the first link is actually add activity. And just like with case notes, if you happen to be looking at this list, you have a little plus button. We'll do the same thing as going to the actions menu. So an activity record has a date, which defaults to today's date. You've got your little, you can of course edit that date, enter one manually. You've got your little calendar date picker out to the right. The user is going to default to you, the person filling out the form. Currently that's editable, so you can pick somebody else if that's appropriate. And then you get an activity, and then you get an item. Typically, the items are tied to the activity that you select. The activity list, which is a short one, it's only 2 in court and out of court. This is a list that your site administrators control. So if I select in court activity, I'm just going to drop down the list of items here real quick and take a look at that. And then I'm going to switch this to out of court. Let's see if they're different. They're probably different. And you can see just by a glance, yeah, those definitely are different lists. So activity controls what you see in item. So I'll leave it at out of court or do in court. So this is a relatively short list. So we've got hearing, jury trial, meeting, other, and my favorite that I noticed the other day, waiting in court. So nobody ever has to do that, right? So nobody has to bother responding, but if somebody wants to post in the chat, I am curious if you all are physically going back to court yet. So just doing my informal poll as I talk to organizations. So if you want to create an activity record, you do that. Now, I don't see anything down here. If you're going to use this feature that we call activity presets, your site administrators may have not had time to set those up. But what you can see here, and I don't know how well this is going to show up, but if you watch when I change this, you may see a little spinning going on up there. So that is trying to determine if there are any activity presets to show. So what this could show is, you know, you're entering a specific activity, an item. As a result of that, you'll be offered the opportunity to create a follow-up task in 15 days, another task in 60 days, you know, and so forth. Oh, and I see you are back physically in court. Okay, somebody has a jury trial next week. So what are you doing on these trainings? You should be getting ready for your trial. So you may see that happen over time. This is very similar to going to Patrick's, why so many options, comment, which is very valid. If you just want to enter the activity, you've got a continue button over here. That's all you need to do. That'll record the activity for you. You also have the ability to attach documents. This will give you a browse button. So it's going to be just like we saw when we were adding a case note. We had the opportunity to upload one or more files. So I won't do that again. You can associate time with this activity. So just like when we were entering a case note, we could also create a time slip. We can do the same thing here. And then this text box, I think this is for the note. I'm going to enter some text here. So I'm going to do a Patrick and say, what is this box for? So I think this is the activity notes box, but it's a little bit different than what I'm used to seeing. So let's check it out. You can also email this note, and then you also then have a list of all the activities that have currently been entered on this case. All right, so I also have another continue button down here. And just so you know, even if you do something below this continue button, if you happen to scroll back up for some reason, you can use either one of these continue buttons. So, all right, so that takes us back to the case profile. And now if I come to the activity log, I can see here is the activity that I entered. This log is in ascending chronological order. So oldest activities show up at the top, newest ones show up at the bottom. And yes, the big box on there was for the activity note versus a case note. If you can see, it says, what is this box for down there? All right, so those are activity records. The next thing we want to talk about are documents. We've talked about documents, in several different ways already in terms of getting them up there. Shown you the document list down towards the bottom of the profile. So just a couple of other words about documents on cases. One is, so we've seen, various ways to upload files to a case, and we call these documents, but just to let you know, as you probably noticed, I've been uploading images and PDFs and so forth. So you're not limited to literally files that are documents. The one other way to upload files to a case is to drag and drop them from your computer onto the documents folder tree here. So I've got to change things around on my screen a little bit so I can do that. And the zoom bar gets in my way when I go to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the file manager on my computer open where I can see it and also the case. So I've just had to scrunch down the browser for a second. And now I'm getting the files manager open on my computer. All right, so the way this works is you can just, select files on your computer or the computer you're working on. And then you can click, hold, and drag those and drop them onto the case. So I don't know how much of the flashing and so forth, but little progress bars, came up and said, uploading. These are all very small files, so it happens very quickly. You can see I've got a bunch of, files up there. Obviously, if I was uploading a big file, then it would take longer and I could, watch that progress bar. But that's not really too exciting in a training, so I don't bother doing that. Common question at this point is, file size. So what's the file size limit, if any, on uploading to a case? So the default is 500 megabytes. So most of your files, you'll be able to handle those, no problem. But, if you got to upload a 4 gigabyte surveillance video or something like that, it's unless you all have made different arrangements to have a larger file size limit, that's not going to work. There's also a question typically about, is there a limit to the number of files you can upload to a case? Answer is no. Is there a limit overall for the whole system? And the answer is there's not a specific limit. At some point, you do incur additional charges for the file storage. It's a pretty high limit. I think only one of our clients has actually hit it at this point. But a lot of our clients now are actually doing the Google Drive and SharePoint integration. So all their documents are stored in their SharePoint, their Google Drive, and don't, take up any space in Legal Server. So your files here, you've got a list of those. If you click on the file title, that will show you the file's profile page. And depending on the file, you may see a preview. So images, PDFs, some Word documents will get a little preview thumbnail. Depending on your permissions, you may have an actions menu when you're looking at a document profile. And you may have the ability to, and I don't, okay, so I don't have the ability to edit this file. So I can't change the document title here. Oddly, I do have the ability to, apparently the ability to delete the file from here. Oh, I don't, okay. So I don't have permission to do that. Let me go back to our case here. I'm going to go back into the document section and just show you a couple of other things. Am I on? Yep, I'm on the same case. And oh, there's the documents. Okay. So you can see for each one of these files, you've got two icons out to the right. One is the little paper icon with the downward pointing arrow is to download a file to the computer that you're on. That will, depending on your browser settings, either just download it directly. It might prompt you to say, what do you want to do to open this file? And then you have a little X, and that is to delete a file. So if you click the X, it's going to give you a prompt. Do you want to delete this file? And if you say, okay, then it is going to delete that file. I always like to point out to people there is not a trash or recycle bin or any other type of place where deleted files go that either you or even your site administrators can go and say, no, we want to undelete those to add them back to a case. You also have the ability to create subfolders. So I've had a couple of different subfolders have been created automatically as people have been working on this case. If I wanted just a generic subfolder for myself, I could click the little yellow icon at the top right of the document section. And then I can enter a folder name. So I can come in and say my stuff. Optionally give it a description. I could optionally leave it, as a subfolder under the top level folder for the case. I could put it under another subfolder here. Click on continue. If I come back down to the document section, I can see there's the subfolder for my stuff, currently empty. But if I wanted to, put one of these files down in there, I can, again, click on the little icon next to the file, drag it, drop it into a subfolder. So we have a question, can we limit who can delete a document? If you're going to use this style of document display on cases, no, you can't. There is a different style of displaying documents on a case, which is the kind of traditional list view in Legal Server, which looks more like a list of cases, case notes, or time slips, and so forth. That feature doesn't have the red X or a delete link for files. So something you all can consider, depending on what you want to do with it. All right, so we also wanted then to close a case and reopen a case. All right, so hopefully one thing I haven't failed to point out, probably most of you noticed it, is that the breadcrumbs little actions search bar up here floats at the top of the page. So your actions menu is always available to you, even if you scroll down, on the profile like I've done here. So I don't have to scroll back to the top of the page before I can get to the actions menu. I can get to it from down here. And if I go to the actions menu, you've got a category called assign, close, and refer. And you have 2 links regarding closing cases. So I'm going to guess recommend close case probably comes before close case final. So let's look at the recommend close case link. All right, so this brings up the recommend close case form. And I can see I've got a date closed defaulting to today's date that's required. The case status, I have a chance to change that. Let's leave it ready to close right now. The file destroy date is being calculated as 7 years out into the future. You all have some control over that. To let you know, this is just a date that you're recording. So at this point, that's all it is. It's just a simple date. So this case is not going to disappear out of LegalServer in 7 years. You optionally can say this case is a good story. And then these are the default 4 text boxes that come with LegalServer, just as examples. So you don't have to use 4 boxes. You can have 1 text box, or you can just have other questions, whatever you want it to be. But some organizations like to keep track of which cases are considered, quote unquote, good story for whatever reason. So just here's some examples, stories of obvious injustice, illicit empathy, and so forth. You also can enter some closed case notes. These are not required. Some organizations, you're supposed to enter kind of a, closing summary, closing memo. But on this form, you're not required to enter anything. You can also email those notes, as we've seen before. The caseworker who closed the case is going to default to you, the person filling out the form. So I'm going to click on continue. And I don't know for sure. I have a feeling there's probably some back-end things that happened in terms of maybe notifying somebody that, I filled out the recommend close case form. But I don't know that for sure. But, let's say now that somebody's told me, yeah, this case is ready to close and I want to come in and actually close it. So I'm going to go to the actions menu, assign, close, and refer, and then close case final. Now, if you notice over on the left, this is a 3-step process. So there's 3 forms that I need to either fill out or just click through and confirm various things before I can actually change this to a closed case. So this legal problem code is showing up here. I'm going to guess this is just for you to review as opposed to, coming in necessarily and changing that. It's going to show you all of the charges on the case. These showed up on the main, criminal profile as well. Each of these also has an edit pencil. So we're not going to talk a lot about charges, but I'll just go ahead and show you. If you click on this edit pencil, that'll bring up the charge details page. And this is where you can optionally enter an arraignment date for a charge, the charge date, what the charge was, whether or not it's a top charge on the case. You can select a disposition once the lookup list is filled in, and then a disposition date. So I'm going to click continue. This is most likely, well, it's going to show me the charge profile, and then I get a link down here back to my case. So this is taking me out of that closed case process. So I'm going to guess, if you have a lot of charge cleanup to do before you go to close a case, you probably want to do it from here. And, oh, interesting. Opiates involved as a field on charges. We haven't talked about this. This is a good example, other than just being interesting to me, that you have this field. There are places, I've told you if you want to do something to a case, you go to the actions menu, but I've showed you a couple of the places where you've got little plus buttons you can click on. This is another place that you can change things on a case without going to the actions menu. So your site administrators have added this opiates involved field, and they've made this editable directly on the profile. So I can click that, and then I can see this is obviously a Boolean yes, no field. So I can select either yes or no. And then I've got a continue button over here. So when they make a field editable like this, basically this is just bringing up a little mini subform, just like instead of going to actions and you get a full, full form. This just shows it all right here. You got a continue button. And so you can edit it that way. All right, so let's go back to actions and go to, and actually close this case. All right, I also have an add charge button down here. So if I need to add another charge before closing this case, I can do that. I'm gonna click on continue to go to the second step. So edit sentences.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Before you go too far away from that, Terry had a question about, so you negotiate down a charge from what you originally entered it. How does that work? You want it to reflect obviously what the original charges were and then what they ultimately pled to. So would you just add an additional charge for the negotiated plea and put notes with it, or what would you do?
Well, it's going to be organization policy. That would be the typical way to do that, because then you've got the full history. And so you can always go back and see that, yes, there was, a felony charge or charges on a case, and those have been negotiated down. I don't think so. Let's see. Well, we've got a couple of sort of duplicates that have been entered here. But if I came in, for example, and edited one of these charges, yeah, so this is kind of a junk charge record there. But I just want to confirm the way you have your form set up. This is not going to. So you can see here, hopefully this did say conspiracy and accessories here, and I changed it to a specific charge instead of a test charge. But you can see, I've now lost the fact that this said test charge before. So again, organization policy in terms of what you want to do or how you decide to do that. I'm fairly confident in saying that most of the public defender clients would, enter the additional, that additional misdemeanor charge in that case.
Okay, thanks. We'll talk more about that here and get an answer out to everyone. But that's how I would deal with it, unless you hear something different, Terry, or everyone, is if there's a fictional charge. In other words, if there's 4 charges and you plead to one charge, then you just reflect that in the notes. But if there's a new fictional charge for, say you have 4 felonies and you get a misto or gross, then you would just enter that in with the notes that that was the negotiated charge.
All right. Yeah, you may want to talk to Michael about that. I think you're working with Michael, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, you may want to talk to him about that. He may have other thoughts about it too, or other examples of how people are doing it.
We will. Thanks.
Sure. All right, so I'm going to go to actions again and close the case. All right, so we're then going to continue, and actually just the legal problem code up here, kind of the same thing in terms of, what you're going to do with this. If you change it here, like if I change this to misdemeanor, you can go back, and there are ways to find out, changes that were made like that, but Legal Server is not set up to keep a nice, history of changes to the problem code there. Just to let you know that. All right, so I'm gonna click on continue. Then I get to the page regarding sentences. Then I'm going to be entering, so I get this little embedded report here that I assume is showing me any existing sentences on this case. And then I've got the form I can fill out to add a sentence. I do have a button here. If I don't need to add a sentence for some reason, then I can click that and then continue on. And then I get to the final step, which is the closed case form. And this is, got some of the same information that we saw before. This is if anything that's been entered that was entered on that recommend closed case form, like the case status was changed or something, that'll be reflected here. We have, was a motion to suppress filed in this case as a required question? If I say yes, was the motion to suppress litigated? I get a yes or no, that doesn't do anything. If I say no, nothing happens up there. All right, so you have case closing notes there. You can email those notes. Then you have a send survey here. This, excuse me, I don't see that's in any way optional, at least currently. So you're going to have to select a contact method, which currently is you can contact the client by email. You can do it manually, display a link, or you can send message by text.
That's
So,
Ron, just people on the training might or might not know that. That's part of our requirements under the Davis settlement is that we do these client surveys. So that's why those have red marks on them. That's why they're not optional. Because we've got to, this is one of the ways that we are implementing that. And then I just wanted to make sure you saw the question about the disposition page related to the prior question.
okay. Oh, yeah, so that's interesting. I was wondering why, because I've never seen, a required survey when closing a case, but
Yeah, we had to put that in.
okay. So you've got 3 different ways to send a link. So email is just what it sounds like. It's going to send an email to, the destination email address that you fill in. I think this will default if you've entered an email address for the client, I think that will default to the client's email address. If you select SMS, which is texting, if you've never heard the acronym SMS, likewise, I think the destination number, if there's a mobile phone number for the client on the case, I think that will pre-fill. But the basic idea, it shows up well here on the texting is you're sending an email or a text or the manual link that I'll show you you're going to send that to the client. And here it says external link, that will be replaced by a link that will be generated by Legal Server. They will click on that link. That'll take them to a web page that where they can fill out the survey, answer whatever questions that you've put on your survey. And then if they answer that and submit it, that information would be stored on the case. We have a question, is there an option to send a printed survey to a client in jail, prison?
Yeah, I was just typing that out.
Okay.
Obviously, if someone gets taken into custody or they are in custody the whole time, then the electronic transmission through text or email is not going to be possible. So yeah, that's the reason in the pull down box why there's the paper print option. manual, I think is what it is, right? So yeah, that's what manual is supposed to mean. And we're working on right now. We don't have it perfected yet, but we're working on two different ways for that to happen, and it could be like it could just be like a pre-stamped envelope. We get a bulk rate, and we'll give the forms and the envelopes to all the offices for you to send out with the judgments. So we'll make sure we're sending all of our clients the judgments or whatever the final disposition of the case is, if it's dismissed, etc. With that will be this client survey.
All right. So your external process, you can have multiple surveys in your system right now on your demo site. You've got the satisfaction survey and then a satisfaction survey in Spanish. The link here, and I mean, Thomas, you may need to talk to Michael about this in terms of the printed ones, because this will not give people like an easy way, at least not in my opinion, to print a survey. This was set up for clients who wanted to, so we have some clients who are using WhatsApp and other, messaging systems. And so they just wanted a link that they could, and we don't have an option, we're not integrated with all the different messaging services. So they just wanted a way to get a link that they could copy and paste into WhatsApp or Google Messages or whatever messaging system they're using to talk to their clients.
Yeah, so the paper the paper surveys would just be in the offices, and so if the individual attorneys or office managers were not able to send them something electronically, then they would just mail them something instead. So that part wouldn't be through Legal Server.
Okay. Good old-fashioned paper. All right. The link here has got an well, all of these actually, they should have an expiration. Yeah, they all have an expiration date because you're generating links. You don't want these links to live forever. So you notice there's an expiration date. So by default, it's 30 days after the form is being filled out. You can manually change this to a different date. You also have a little calculator link here. So you say, well, I know this client's a little bit slow about doing things like this, so I'm going to give them 60 days, to before the link expires. All right, so link that I could copy and paste and do something with that. So I'm going to click continue. And now I've closed my case. So I can see the disposition at the top left is now closed. And now also, if I look at the actions menu, now it may not be readily obvious to you, but I can tell that the actions menu has fewer links in it than it did when the case was open. And that's something that your site administrators have a great deal of control over. So they can say, for example, and I don't know if this is true, but let's just say, on a closed case, you may not see a link to, add charges or something like that. So let's look at criminal actions real quick. So you can still do that. So you've got all these links here, but they could turn those off when a case is closed. So the only thing I want to point out is the actions menu can and often does change. Right now on your demo site, because a common question is, I closed the case and then 2 weeks later something happened and I wanted to add a note, I wanted to enter some time, whatever it happens to be. Can I still do that, or do I have to reopen the case? So the answer is it depends on what you want to do. Just go to your closed case, look at it. I can come in, I can still add notes to this case, I can still add time, upload files, and so forth.
So I wanted to respond real quick about tracking the surveys. So the client surveys are, that's the tracking of that, or the making sure that they, fill that out. That won't be the attorney's responsibility. So what exists in Legal Server is a link to a form on a state website for them to fill out, and they can fill it out either with a computer or their phone if they have access to that, and then that stays confidential. So the attorneys won't ever see the survey. So with that information will stay confidential, and for our purposes of complying with the Davis settlement requirements. The paper, the same thing. All we can do is mail them to them. The return address, you will mail them to them. The return address will be to our office, and it's not like we can make them fill them out, but hopefully they will. Won't require any money or anything from them. It's just check boxes mostly, and then they put it in the envelope. So yeah, that was a long answer to your question, but you're not responsible for tracking or making sure that they're completed.
All right, so we had an earlier question about reopening cases. So again, reopening cases depends on your permissions in the system in terms of whether or not you see the reopen link in the actions menu. So I'm going to close case. I'm going to go to actions. This is assign, close, refer category. I do have a link to reopen a case here. Don't know about you all. I mean, some organizations have a lot of organization policy about if you should reopen a case, when, or if a case is too old, you should start a new case. So just follow whatever your organization policy is. Or, if you come to a closed case and you don't see this reopen case link, so that's, talk to your site administrators because they may have taken away that permission for your user role. If I see the link, I can click on it. This brings up a form. So it's got the required disposition, defaults to reopen. You can reopen a case into a pending disposition. That's pretty rare. So you probably may never change that from anything but reopen. The date open, notice it's the original date opened on the case. Most organizations, that's what they want, but some organizations, the policy will be to change that to today's date. The office is going to stay the same, but you can change it. The case is now going to be in a different office. You need to select the program. You also need to select who the primary assignment on the case is. So even if, when this case was closed, you were the primary assignment, you're going to be the primary assignment again. On the reopened case, you have to reselect yourself. The funding code is going to stay the same. You could enter some new assignment notes here, email those notes. You can optionally change the case status at this point. So I'll change this one to working. Click on continue. So now back on the case profile, I can see the disposition box is now says open again. Then I'm going to scroll down into case notes and show you this case note that was created. I didn't do anything to create this case note. So this was recorded by the system, and that's why it says created by system user. The note type is reopen the case. So it gives you some helpful information. Somebody comes back to this case later and looks at it. They can see that it was reopened by me today. They can say it was previously been closed, today by me. What the closing reason, I don't think you all record closing reason, and then this internal closing number here. I just want to let you know that, if you reopen a case, that note is going to get recorded, and there's nothing you can do with it. You can't, edit that note and so forth. All right, so the other thing that we want to talk about today, everybody's been anxiously awaiting the full discussion on timekeeping. So your wait is over. We're going to do that. So I'm going to guess for a lot of you, you're, mainly going to be entering time on cases. And we've already seen, there's different ways to enter time on cases directly. Actually, I'll go back to a case when you're entering a case note, when you're entering an activity record. And you can also just, start the process of just entering a time slip on a case. You can do that from the actions menu. You have a link called add time. You also recall you have this time slips list on a case, which shows you all the time slips, and you have a little plus button here. You have one for add staff time and one for pro bono time. Don't know if you'll ever be using the pro bono time one, but I'm sure everybody on this call is considered staff. So if you use one of these buttons, this is the one you should use. So it's going to bring up the case time slip form. Now, sometimes it's a little bit confusing to people that, they think they have to do something in this search box here. But since I did this from a case, it's already been linked to the I need a help case, so I can skip over that. The data service defaults to today's date. So we assume temporaneous timekeeping, but you can, of course, change this date manually or with your little date picker icon. Your site administrators can limit the date range that you can put in here. So they can say, for example, you can't enter a data service more than 30 days in the past, 30 days in the future, and so forth. So if you ever run into that, you'll get a message. You'll try to save the time slip. You'll get a message at the top of the page. It'll tell you what that date range is. And I think it also tells you, contact your site administrator if you have questions. The caseworker is going to default to you on your demo site. At least this is a selectable field. So I can, right now, the way this form is configured, I can record case time for other people. The activity type looks like it's defaulting to attorney, but you can see your other options here: expert, investigator, other, and staff. That's a list controlled by your site administrators. Also, explains to you an activity code. I don't see. Well, there's a note here about activity code. Doesn't look like it's on this particular form. Then you can enter your time spent. As I mentioned earlier, your site is currently configured to enter time in tenths of an hour. So, if you put in 1.25 for an hour and a quarter, that's going to round that up to 1.3. If I put in, 1.1 for an hour and 6 minutes, that won't round that. But if I did something like, 1.12, that's going to round that down. You also have the ability to click this enable times button. Some people like to, some people, you may be required to enter a specific time. So I want to say, this is worked on this case from 3 to 5 p.m. and that'll calculate the time spent for me there. You also have the ability to record miles driven and parking and other expenses. So this, I'm going to guess, you all are going to be using, some people are going to be running reports and so forth, and you'll get reimbursed for some of this stuff. So you have a case note here. It actually says that the label says cases note. But this is the reverse of what we did before, where we added a case note and then said, yes, I want to attach a time slip to this case note. So now we're entering a time slip, but doing a case note here. So I can say case note from time slip. I can email that note just like I did before. I've got two buttons here. Continue would save the time slip. But I have a button here, save and add more time for this case. So that will save this time slip. It'll start another time slip linked to the same case. And some of the information will be copied over, but then I could come in, for example, and say, I spent 3 hours for this time slip. And then I click on continue. When I click on the continue button, it takes me to the time slip profile. I've got, and it just shows me the information I've entered. If your user role has permission, you've got an edit button up here to the right. You have a link directly back to the case here. You can tell from the breadcrumbs here, we're still on the I need a help case. and that's also a clickable link. And I'll just come back to the time slips list on the case, just so you can see there is the two time slips that I entered are showing up there. You also have a little My Time widget at the top of the page, which is going to show you how many hours you've entered overall in the system for the current date. So right now, my user account is recorded 5.6 hours. So that's entering time on a case. To talk about time a little more generally, I'm going to go to the timekeeping tab and the green navigation bar. So this page is going to show me a few different things. One, it's going to show me this timekeeping log, which is an embedded report, which is showing me by default, it's showing me my time for the current month. So I can't highlight it on the screen, but you can see there's a default filter on this report, data service, current month, and that'll change, magically. So you go to your timekeeping page on July 1st. It'll probably be empty when you first do it because it'll say July 1st to July 31st unless you forward dated some time. You may recall for these embedded reports, some of these filters you can change, some you can't. I should point out that there is an unchangeable, a locked filter that the advocate ID is matched to the user viewing. So I can only see on my own time on this page. But I do have the ability to open up this filter and say, well, I want to see all my time for the current year. So I can select that, click on the apply and refresh button, and you should be able to see it's expanded. So somebody did put in some time under the demo trainer account back in February. You may also notice that the embedded report is broken out by month and then by individual date. Within each date, then it's got all the various time slips that you've entered. There's a couple of other tabs on this page. There's a My Open Cases tab. The function of these lists is just to give you convenience links. So if on My Open Cases, I can see I've got 2 open cases and I have add staff time links here. So if I wanted to add time to the I'm in trouble case, I could click on the case number, go to the actions menu, say I wanted to add time, fill out the time slip, or I can do that directly from here. So I'll just add some time to the I'm in trouble case. So same time slip form that we've seen before. I'll just record an hour here. Click on continue. Again, it shows me the time slip profile. I've got links back to the case. In this instance, I want to go back to our main timekeeping page. And then I want you to see that here is the time slip that I entered just now on the I'm in trouble case. You may also notice that on my time widget up here, it shows now I've entered 6.6 hours. The recently viewed Cases Matter tab is the same idea as My Open Cases, just to give you some convenience links if those would be helpful. The difference with this list is instead of just your open cases, this is any case that you've looked at. So I've looked at this Michael Smith case. It's not one of my cases that I'm assigned to, but I could come in and add time to it from here. Now, on the main timekeeping page in the actions menu, I see that you all only have 2 different types of time that you can enter. So you have case time and you have other time. There's some other links here that are to some that'll actually run reports for you. Probably not going to find, especially with your embedded report here, much use for those, but feel free to play around with those. But I want to show you the other time slip. So this is going to bring up the other time slip form. So it's got the data service defaulting to today's date. Notice on this one, the caseworker is a read-only field. So I can't record other time for other people. So I can only record it for myself. The activity type, I need to select, that's a required field. I'm going to select other. The funding code can't be pulled from the case, so I have to tell Legal Server which funding code I want to use. I'm going to use county and then enter some time spent. So I'm going to intentionally enter 19 hours because I want to see if something happens here. I can enter some activity details on this time slip. So I don't know if those are showing up on your embedded report. Let's find out. I click on continue. So yeah, so I violated a couple of rules that you all have set in the system. So the first one is that time spent must be less than or equal to 18 hours. So for any given time slip, you can't record more than 18 hours. The other thing that I've violated is that you can't submit more than 24 hours for any given calendar day. And so that's just, you know, a kind of a general protection. So 18 hours, you all control the 18 there. That's just the default in Legal Server. So, you know, anybody ever audits your records, if they see, you know, a 22-hour time slip, they would probably find that a little bit suspicious. So 18, you know, that left you, you know, you worked 18 hours, that left you 6 hours to sleep and do everything else. So that's, you know, possible. People work 18-hour days. Nobody can work more than 24 hours in a day, physically impossible. So again, it's just a kind of a protection for you as an organization. So I'll bump this down to 8. Click on continue. And so here is my other time slip that I entered. And yeah, you are showing activity details on the embedded report there. So a common question at this point is, you know, I entered a time slip and like I entered this other time slip and, you know, I made a mistake on the number of hours or something like that. You know, can I go back and change that? So the answer is typically you do have the ability to edit time slips and change them. The way you have your site configured right now, actually, I don't have the ability to, don't have a way to get back to this time slip to edit it. So something that you all may want to think about. For these time slips that are linked to cases, I could go to the case itself. And I think I saw clickable ID links on your time slips page. Yes. So here on time slips that have been linked to cases, notice that there's an ID in the far left column that is a clickable link. That will bring you to the time slip profile. And again, if your user role has permissions, you'll see an edit link here. If you see, or edit button. If you see the edit button and click it, that'll just bring the time slip back up in editable form. And you could come in and make whatever changes you needed to this time slip. So I could say, you know, oops, I mistyped 3. That was really 0.3 hours, you know, that I spent on this time slip on this case. I can come down and click continue and change that. There's something else you may see over time. I don't know if you all are going to use it. There is a feature in Legal Server where site administrators can go in and they can, it's called posting time. If they do that, that makes time slips so they can no longer be edited. They actually can't be edited by anybody in the system. So some organizations use that because they want to lock down time slips after a certain period of time. So I just like to point it out. So if you ever can get back to a time slip profile and you're looking for the edit button that you're, you know, if you can normally see it, you might instead see a message at the top of the page. It says this time slip has been posted. You know, it can't be changed. And you might as well not even bother going to your site administrators because they can't change it either. All right, so that is timekeeping. And that is at least some of the things you can do in terms of working on cases. You know, as we saw, there's, you know, tons of links in terms of working on cases, other things that you can do. But, you know, we also didn't want to make you sit through 4 hours or so of training to do all those things. So that completes our agenda. And I think, let's see, yeah. So I think all the questions that have been posted in the chat, I think Thomas is taking care of answering those. We do have some time left, so feel free at this point to unmute yourself, ask questions, post other questions in the chat room. And then if we don't get any questions here in a minute or so, then we'll check with Thomas and see if we want to just go ahead and end early. If we want to ask for a volunteer to sing a song or tell jokes until the top of the hour, it's going to be your all's choice.
I think everyone would probably be okay with getting out of class early. Just want to remind everyone, though, this, if you missed anything, if you want a refresher, the same class will be offered on Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. And then the next 2 weeks, we'll move into some little bit more advanced training. Next week's calendars and basic reports, and then there's another advanced admin training after that. I think I'll probably send out an email on this, but for those of you still on or listening, if you are interested in calendars and how to pull certain reports and any advanced admin training, please just shoot me a quick email letting me know. I'd like to get a little bit of a head count and what day you think you'll be going. Again, you don't have to commit to that right now. I'm just trying to get an idea of whether we need all 4 of those trainings still. If we do, that's no problem, but just want to make sure there's going to be enough people interested in them. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. You can unmute your mic or just write it. Otherwise, we'll let everybody go for the day. All right, seeing none. Ron, thank you very much for your time again. I appreciate it. And we'll probably see you later on.
Okay. All right. Hope everybody has a good rest of the day.
Okay, take care.
Bye.